In October this year, the European Union officially passed a proposal to impose tariffs on electric vehicles exported from China. This move can be said to have pushed China-EU relations to the brink of a freezing point. When the two sides sat down to talk about this issue again, although no results had been reached, Beijing has now decisively launched countermeasures. At the end of October this year, a Chinese battery giant announced that they would suspend two major investments in Germany, with a total investment of 3.87 billion euros. What's interesting is that Italy recently visited China and signed a bunch of cooperation agreements in the automotive field with China. But when the EU voted on the final increase in tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles, Italy stood in line to support the increase in tariffs. Therefore, China also unceremoniously listed Italy as one of the countermeasures and suspended all investment projects in automobile factories in Italy. In today's video, let's take a look at what impact these countermeasures of China will have on the EU. Will it make the EU start to rethink its policy toward China? If you like our video content, please click to subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you can receive all our latest video content. Now let's get into today's topic. Everyone should have heard about the EU's sanctions on China's electric vehicle industry recently. The reason behind this is actually very simple. China's electric vehicles are developing too fast, so fast that it quickly dominated the European market, which resulted in a series of countermeasures. According to the latest statistics, 8 of the top 10 best-selling electric vehicle brands in the European market are from China. Even a big name like Tesla can only rank 4th in the European market, and its sales are far behind those of Chinese brands. In addition, our latest analysis from European institutions shows that nearly 19.5% of the electric vehicles sold in Europe last year were made in China. It is expected that by 2024, this proportion will rise further to a quarter of 25%. While Chinese brands are like a fish in water in the European market, the sales of European domestic cars are getting worse year by year, which is a big problem for European automakers. In response to this situation, the EU has launched an anti-subsidy investigation on Chinese electric vehicles since last year. In July 2024, the EU officially released an anti-subsidy tax plan for Chinese electric vehicle export manufacturers, of which BYD was levied 17%, Geely 18.8%, SAIC as high as 35.3%, and other partner companies were levied 20.7% tariffs. They claim that these measures are to protect the local auto industry and curb the rapid expansion of Chinese brands in the market. Interestingly, while the EU is levying anti-subsidy duties, it is also inviting Chinese electric vehicle giants to build factories in Europe. In fact, this is also a curve to save the country way for Chinese cars to enter the European market. As long as Chinese electric vehicle companies have a production base in Europe, they will no longer have to worry about high export tariffs. They can sell directly in the local market, thereby effectively reducing cost pressure and improving competitiveness. As far as I know, earlier this year, several European countries such as Spain, Italy, Germany, and France held business talks with China in succession, actively hoping that Chinese auto companies can build factories in their local areas. Many authoritative sources believe that the EU, on the one hand, imposed tariffs on Chinese cars, and on the other hand, enthusiastically invited China to invest and build factories. In fact, it wanted to use this method to force China to set up factories in Europe. Doing so is good for them. On the one hand, it can promote the local economy, and on the other hand, it can more easily obtain the core technology of Chinese electric vehicles. Some people even worry that once Chinese companies enter those European countries with some subtle attitudes, they may face various means of technological snooping. However, Chinese companies were not so easily fooled, but quickly launched counterattacks. So, what did China do? In fact, as the EU proposed to impose tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles in July this year, the two sides have held several talks. China has always hoped to ease the EU's tax increase proposal through negotiations. But from this year to now, the two sides have talked 9 times, and the results still did not satisfy China. By October 2024, the EU finally finalized the tariff resolution. 10 countries supported the imposition of a maximum tariff of 35.3% on the basis of the original 10%, 5 countries opposed, and 12 countries abstained. Such a result actually shows that the two sides have almost no room for maneuver. As a result, many Chinese companies began to reevaluate their investment plans in Europe and announced the suspension of projects to build factories in Europe. Through investigation, we found that Honeycomb Energy, the 7th-ranked power battery giant in China, recently decided to stop the operation of 2 European companies and suspended the construction and operation of 2 factories in Germany. Chinese companies also directly admitted this decision and said that the main reason was that the development of the electric vehicle market in Europe did not meet expectations and was somewhat different from the expectations of all parties, so they had to make this difficult choice. As for when construction will restart, there is no specific timetable yet, but the decision will officially take effect on January 31st, 2025. One of the 2 factories is in Saarland, Germany, and was originally planned to build a battery module and assembly plant. The project was announced in November 2020 with a planned annual production capacity of 24 GWh and a total investment of 2 billion euros. It was originally expected to be completed in mid-2024. The other is a cooperation agreement signed in September 2022, located in the Loch-Hammer area of Brandenburg, with a planned annual production capacity of 16 GWh and a total investment of more than 1.87 billion euros. It is expected to be put into production in 2025. This is also the first battery cell factory invested by a Chinese energy company overseas, but construction has also been suspended this year. Germany lost not only 3.87 billion euros in investment in these 2 battery factories, but also missed the opportunity to develop in the field of power batteries. Recently, the European battery giant Beifu just laid off 1,600 people, indicating that Europe's local manufacturing capacity is indeed a bit vulnerable, and now it is heavily dependent on foreign countries. As the core of the European economy, Germany has always hoped to attract Chinese companies to invest in order to consolidate its position in the global electric vehicle industry chain. However, the decision of Chinese companies to suspend the construction of factories in Germany almost made this goal go down the drain. The withdrawal of the battery giant Honeycomb Energy, coupled with the weakness of the local power battery field in Europe, may lead to a tight supply of power batteries in Europe in the future. It is worth noting that in addition to Germany, Italy has also failed to escape China's countermeasures. So what did China do to Italy? Previously, a European auto giant announced that due to cost considerations, it decided to transfer its production line in Italy to Morocco, where costs are lower. This decision caused a lot of headaches for Italy, and it urgently needed to fill the market gap. So in March this year, Italy publicly stated that they were negotiating with 3 Chinese companies, hoping that these companies could set up factories in Italy. In order to enhance the persuasiveness, Italy also specially invited the heads of these 3 companies to visit the local area, hoping to impress them through on-site experience. However, unexpectedly, after a comprehensive evaluation, the 3 companies finally declined Italy's invitation and the cooperation failed to be reached. In July, Italian Prime Minister Maroni personally visited China, hoping to take this opportunity to attract Chinese automakers to invest and build factories in Italy. After the visit, the factory construction negotiations between China's Dongfeng Motor brand and the Italian government also entered the final stage. The Italian media even commented that this was one of the important results of Maroni's visit to China. Shockingly, in the EU's vote on imposing high tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles, the Italian government unexpectedly voted in favor. This sudden situation surprised the Chinese side. According to the latest news, relevant Chinese companies have decided to suspend their plans to build factories in Europe. According to insiders, this decision was mainly due to Italy's support for the EU's tax increase policy. According to my investigation, The ownership and use rate of cars by consumers in the Italian car market is very high, but under the challenges of the new energy era, the sales of electric vehicles only account for 4% to 6% of the total car sales. Since France's Stellantis dominates the Italian market, the Italian government is also actively seeking to introduce external forces to break this monopoly situation. From this, we can analyze that hoping that Chinese companies will go to Italy to build factories is part of this plan. Because during the previous visit to China, Italy hoped to attract Chinese electric vehicle companies to set up factories and also proposed the expectation of obtaining technology transfer free of charge. This is obviously hoping to take this opportunity to enhance the country's technological strength in the field of electric vehicles. At that time, facing the tension in the European Union, Chinese companies also agreed in order to enhance bilateral relations. But as Chinese companies now stop plans to build factories in Italy, it also means that Italy still has many challenges to face. In my opinion, the suspension of investment in factory construction is just the beginning of China's countermeasures against the European Union. Previously, many Chinese companies have canceled brand promotion activities related to electric vehicles in Europe. For example, China's Chang'an Automobile canceled its European launch event originally scheduled for this week in Milan, and said that whether it will enter the European market in the future will depend on the EU's attitude towards tariffs. If Chinese companies decide to stop entering the European market, then even if the EU raises the import tax on electric vehicles to 100% or even 1,000%, it will be of no avail. At most, it can only protect its fragile consumer market. In contrast, China still has broad opportunities in markets such as Southeast Asia and the Middle East. Although the economic systems of these countries are different from those of Europe, as Chinese companies develop locally, I believe that higher growth will soon be achieved. So, what do you think of China's sanctions against the EU? To not miss out on our future projects and news updates, please make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. We will continue to provide you with more exciting and interesting content.